What did you hear?
Stepping on the ground real big. You know that sound that we hear in Palisades? That
Yeah.
I heard it back in there.
Too muddy and wet to walk back there.
We could like make, I don't know if I can make that. I'm gonna sink right into that front. Squish.
Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization. We're on the north side of Bear Lake looking for Bigfoot, and one of the reasons is a recent Bigfoot sighting along with the history of Bigfoot sightings. We're going to share some of those sightings with you that happened on the north side of Bear Lake. This one most recently, May 27th, 2017, around 6 p.m. Doug, he messages me. Remember when I told you about me and North Bear Lake experience? My wife just had a Bigfoot sighting on the highway about a half a mile from Ovid on the Montpelier side. She saw a big black mass, tall, not wide. As she passed, she knew it was too tall and narrow to be an animal like a cow, elk, or a moose. Then she heard a loud whistle and smelled a horrible smell. She thought it may have been the water that was sitting since the snow melted, but that water does not smell. We just went over there. She was so shook up because of the sighting and the overwhelming feeling of being watched that she was in tears. I think she saw something out of the ordinary for sure. I responded, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Thanks for letting me know." Did she get a height estimate or have any details like the color or see the face profile or anything? Doug responds, "Not a lot in detail, but if she had to put a height on it, she would guess 7 to 7.5 feet tall. It's the whistle that gets me. To hear it while going along the freeway, whatever it was loud." I responded, "Did you make it back to where she saw it and look around for a trackway of footprints?" Doug responds, "She couldn't remember the exact spots." We showed up less than a week from the sighting report, and here's the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Organization follow-up report. This was a daytime Bigfoot sighting. We received this message May 27th, 2017 at around 7:28 p.m., roughly a little more than an hour after the victim had their Bigfoot sighting. I don't know, maybe she thought she was a victim. I think she was pretty lucky to have a Bigfoot sighting. They're very rare. The area this woman spotted Bigfoot has a history of several dozen Bigfoot sightings. We traveled to the location in Idaho north of Bear Lake, May 31st, 2017. So we were actually there like 4 days after the Bigfoot sighting, and we camped 5 days about 6 miles from the sighting report location and spent most of the time checking out the sighting report area and the mountains near the sighting. During our expedition, we found a few Bigfoot-shaped tracks over 10 miles from the sighting location. They were almost 14 inches long and 7 inches at the widest part of the toes. In camp, we heard a few vocalizations the last night we were there, along with stomping on the ground on the hill overlooking our camp. Was not able to identify the creature or animal that was making the vocalizations that was loudly stomping on the ground. We'll be posting videos of this expedition to Bear Lake. Just look on our channel and you'll be able to find our expedition there. We're going to leave you with several past Bigfoot sightings near this area where the woman had her Bigfoot sighting.
A few summers ago, while my family and I were camping in St. Charles Canyon on the Idaho side of Bear Lake, a little boy got lost for a while his family was visiting Minnetonka Cave. We were coming out of the cave, and we heard a group of adults talking, and we offered to help look for the boy. Some of the group went off towards the campgrounds, and my group, along with the father of the child, hiked up and over the backside of the cave. There were a lot of game trails. The kid was missing no more than 10 to 15 minutes. We would yell his name and then listen for any sound. Well, after yelling his name again, we heard a whistle, long and loud, sort of like holding a note for at least a 10-second count. So we headed in the direction of where it came from, and when we came around the batch of trees, there was the kid, sitting on a rock, smiling and acting like a kid. His father grabbed him and comforted him, and as we were walking back, the father asked him where he got his whistle from. And the kid was like, "I didn't have a whistle. The big hairy man whistled for me." And that is all he said, and the dad blew it off as his kid's imagination. But I knew better. I knew for a fact that we heard a whistle from a Bigfoot. How else could he explain hearing a whistle and then go in the direction of it and find the kid? I went back a few hours later and looked for signs. There were no prints, but it was eerily quiet in the area. No bird sounds or anything.
St. Charles, Idaho is just under 9 miles from the Utah border. St. Charles Canyon connects within the Franklin Basin drainage, where there have also been sighting reports. They start to all make sense and connect with the physical characteristic of the landscape when you start to look at the points on the map. Until Justin Judd Phelps, resident of St. Charles, Idaho, disclosed his 1972 sightings, the Bigfoot phenomenon had not been reported outside of the Pacific Northwest. Phelps, a lineman engineer on the Union Pacific Railroad, claims to have seen the creature in the depths of the canyon near St. Charles on January 2, 1972. The Bigfoot's tracks were similar to a bear's but slimmer and about a size 13 in length. They sunk in about a foot into the snow. Each time the creature was sighted, it stamped its feet and shook its head like a child in anger. A tree that measured 9 feet tall near where the creature was saw put the creature at about 6 feet tall in comparison. In hopes of catching a glimpse of the creature again, on January 2, 1972, Phelps left his St. Charles home on a snow machine and arrived at the place of his previous sighting around noon. It was bitter cold, so he built a fire. He had been there about 2 hours, and the fire was getting hot, so he decided to put a little snow on the fire, and then he got the feeling he was being watched. It was between 1:30 and 2 p.m. He looked up from where he had been resting, stretching on his snow machine, and saw just 100 yards away an ape-like creature with grayish-brown hair returning his gaze. It was standing by a young pine tree, and when it saw Phelps look his way, it waved its arms and stomped its feet and headed for the deeper woods. The first time Phelps saw the creature, it frightened him and he fired above its head. This time, however, he spoke soothingly to it and attempted to take its picture. When he pulled the self-developing Polaroid film from the camera, there was no figure on the scene. Possibly because he had an older model camera and his hands had been shaking while attempting to capture the creature on film. Upon investigating the spot where he had seen the creature, he found tracks, which had sunk in about a foot into the loose snow. The snow at the site was 6 to 8 feet deep, about 2 feet being new snow. He did not follow the trail. This final Bigfoot sighting report that we're going to go over in this general area was submitted by witness Alan Meyer on Friday, December 26, 1997. 2 campers' night observation of large creatures near their campground. The Bigfoot sighting happened in the summer of 1968 in St. Charles Canyon. A dark humanoid form was observed standing in the woods just outside the campground clearing. 4 of us were camping in sleeping bags, no tents, in a clearing recently cut by the Forest Service to develop a campground. No one else in the area. It was in the early morning hours, perhaps 3 a.m. My best friend and I had been talking about the strange atmosphere of the place and our wives were asleep. I was just dozing off when suddenly I felt myself jarred awake by a powerful feeling of a nearby presence watching us. I sat bolt upright and looked directly at a large humanoid. The form was standing at the edge of the woods, about 100 feet away. Whatever it was totally black. I could see no features, but the form was so perfectly clear. At this point my friend sat and looked in the same direction. "Do you see what I see?" I asked him. "I sure do," he replied. We continued staring at it, and it at us for several minutes. Then somehow we got the message that it wasn't going to bother us if we didn't bother it. I told my friend we should just lie down and go to sleep. He agreed, and this may have been the strangest part. We both fell asleep instantly. At that time, I never heard of Bigfoot. I don't know what this being was and still don't. It could have been a Bigfoot. There are a lot of limestone caverns in the area, and it was still very wild back then. We didn't smell anything or hear any unusual sounds. Although this has multiple fully developed campgrounds and paved road, now, in 1967 it was very wild and very little visited. Even in the daylight, there was something primitive and haunting about this place, quite different in feeling from the other camps in the area. Well, there you go. There's a history of Bigfoot sightings in the area. The latest one is the end of May 2017, and then we got Bigfoot sightings that stretch clear back to 1968 in the area. A Bigfoot sighting hotspot, a lot of Bigfoot sightings. These are just 4 of a couple of dozen that are in the general area. I hope you enjoyed. We're going to keep looking around for Bigfoot in this area. We'll continue to watch. I hope you guys come along on some of our Bigfoot expeditions into the area and listen to the other sighting reports that come out of the area. Keep on watching. We're going to keep on squatching.